All right, friends, settle in because we're about to talk about something real. Betrayal. It's a bitter pill to swallow, but it's a lesson life dishes out more often than we'd like. Ever notice how some folks chase after shiny things, willing to sell their souls for a shot at the high life? But what happens when the price of ambition is someone else's well-being, maybe even yours? Think of those countless stories where someone throws another under the bus for a few fleeting moments of glory. Turns out that kind of success is usually as solid as a sandcastle at high tide. Statistics don't lie. Money grabbed through deception slips away faster than it comes. There's a reason for that. Building your empire on someone else's pain creates a debt the universe always collects. Now let's bring it home. Ever feel like you were put on the sacrificial altar? If this resonates, then you were chosen. Maybe you've been there, friend. I know I have. You're minding your own business when suddenly you're the one being traded, bartered, whispered about in dark corners. People you trusted thought sacrificing you was their ticket to the big time, like cashing in your life for a winning lottery ticket. They thought your life was something to be traded away as if it were something meaningless. But guess what? That deal, it didn't go through. It's like watching the villain in a movie lose everything even after selling their soul. The universe has a funny way of protecting those it has marked as untouchable. They betrayed you, yet the prize still slipped through their fingers. They thought they could profit from your sacrifice, but in the end, they lost everything. Both you and the supposed reward. The very act of trying to bury you became the shovel that dug their own grave. This isn't just about betrayal, it's about exposure, a stark reminder that divine plans can't be derailed by human greed. Stay with me because what I'm about to tell you is true. The biggest mistake those who betray make is thinking you were ever for sale in the first place. First, they traded your humanity for currency but lost their own soul. Think about the sheer audacity of valuing another person's worth in dollars and cents. The brutal truth is betrayal isn't about money. It's about a gaping hole within them that no amount of wealth can fill. They thought stripping you of your dignity, dragging your name through the mud, and reducing your life to a price tag would somehow make them powerful. But what really happened? They hollowed themselves out. They chipped away at their own integrity, until all that was left was a shell of greed. The moment they decided your worth could be exchanged for profit, they exposed their own emptiness. Remember, money has a way of magnifying who a person already is. In their case, they thought taking from you would fill the void within them. They saw you as disposable, a stepping stone to their own glory. But here's the twist. While they thought they were climbing, they were actually falling. Every lie, every shady deal, every plot against you was another piece of their soul sold off, and there's no buyback for a lost soul. What makes it even more tragic is they didn't even get what they wanted. They had a number in their head, a reward they were sure would come from betraying you, but all they got was emptiness. They might have touched money, yes, but money without peace turns into poison. They might have gained influence for a moment, but influence without integrity collapses like dust. They were really chasing fulfillment, and fulfillment cannot be purchased at the expense of another's destiny. In betraying you, they thought they had taken everything. But look at you, you're still here. You're still breathing, still walking, still carrying something they couldn't touch, the essence of who you are. They thought they were buying power, but they only bought exposure of their own emptiness. And the more they tried to sell pieces of you, the more they revealed that the only thing truly for sale was themselves. It's a twisted irony, isn't it? They reduced you to a transaction, but in the end, they became the receipt proof of their own emptiness, proof that greed never wins. They didn't just lose you, they lost themselves. Second, they gambled with your life, but the dealer was God. That's where everything backfired for them. They thought your destiny was a deck of cards they could shuffle, deal, and stack to their advantage. They moved like players who believed the outcome was fixed in their favor. But destiny doesn't answer to human greed, it answers to divine authority. And the moment they placed their bets against you, they stepped into a game where the house always wins and the house belongs to God. They risked everything on the idea that you were powerless. They thought if they played their cards right, lies, deception, betrayal, sacrifice, they could control how your story ended. They were sure they had the upper hand because to them money and influence controlled the board. But they didn't realize God was holding the final card, and when God deals, He doesn't play by human rules. He makes their winning hand look like a losing one in an instant. Every move they made against you was a move against themselves. They gambled their integrity, their peace of mind, and their future, thinking sabotaging yours would give them leverage. But that's not how divine justice works. In a gamble, there's always risk, but they were blind to the fact that the greatest risk wasn't losing you, it was losing themselves. The moment they staked your life as their bet, they handed over their own stability as collateral, and God collected. Gamblers are confident before they lose, sitting with smiles, boasting about the hand they're holding. But when the table turns, pride becomes humiliation. That's exactly what happened to those who gambled with your destiny. They thought it was entertainment, a sure win, a shortcut to wealth and power. Instead, their so-called victory became a public loss. What they didn't know is that your life was never theirs to play with. You are not a card in anyone's deck. You are a divine assignment, and whoever tries to gamble with that will discover the same truth no matter how much they bet against you. God rigged the table in your favor. Third, their sacrifice created a debt they can't repay. They thought betraying you would be a one-time transaction, a quick payday with no consequences. But betrayal isn't free. It comes with a debt, and the debt outlives the reward. They convinced themselves that sacrificing you was a shortcut to success, that the cost would never catch up with them. But every betrayal writes an invoice, and life collects payment with interest. The act they thought would elevate them became the weight pulling them down. You can't destroy someone chosen by God without owing something back to the universe. They thought they were clever, using your name, your energy, and your life as currency. But currency without backing is counterfeit. And counterfeit gets exposed. The moment they sold you out, they bought chains for themselves. Chains of paranoia, guilt, and fear of being found out. They didn't just trade you for money, they traded their peace, their credibility, and their future for temporary gain. The debt isn't measured in dollars. It shows up in restless nights, doors that won't open, relationships that collapse, and opportunities that slip away. They tried to profit off your downfall, but the profit was cursed. It looks like money in the bank, but spends like ashes. Nothing they gained holds its value because it was purchased with the destruction of someone who was never theirs to sell. The cruel twist: they can't repay this debt. No matter how many deals they make, how many new schemes they try, how many people they try to manipulate, the cost of sacrificing someone like you isn't something money can cover. It's written in a spiritual ledger, and no human hand can erase it. The very thing they thought would enrich them has bankrupted them in ways they can't fix. Their lives look stuck on repeat. They gain, they lose, they circle the same emptiness. When you sacrifice the chosen for profit, you sign yourself into lifelong debt. The creditor isn't you, it's God, and He always collects. Fourth, they fed on you thinking you were disposable, but you were indestructible. They treated you like a resource, believing your worth could be emptied and tossed aside once they had drained what they wanted. They circled around you like predators, believing they could strip you of energy, joy, opportunities, and peace, and that you would run dry. But you were never powered by them. Your strength was never tied to their validation, their presence, or their approval. It was anchored in something eternal, which is why every attempt to drain you only exposed how indestructible you are. They thought breaking you would be the end of you, but some people multiply when pressure is applied. Every setback they forced on you, every tear they wanted you to cry, every betrayal they thought would finish you became seeds planted in the ground of your destiny. Instead of withering, you grew deeper roots. Instead of collapsing, you developed resilience. Those who try to consume you end up fueling the very power they hope to extinguish. By underestimating you, they became unwilling contributors to your rise. Every attempt to bleed you of hope built an even stronger determination. Every shadow they tried to cast over you only made your light more visible. They fed off you, but instead of making you weaker, they exposed the fact that you are sustained by a source they can't touch. Disposable things crumble under pressure. They fade, they break, they vanish. But chosen ones don't. Being buried isn't the same as being gone. When life buries the indestructible, it doesn't kill it. It plants it, and that's what you are: planted, not destroyed. They miscalculated badly. They thought it was consumption, but turned out to be contribution. They believed they had taken everything from you, but in reality they only sharpened, strengthened, and expanded you. They proved something they never intended to prove. You cannot be erased because your existence was never built on their approval. You were indestructible all along, and now they have to live with the proof. Fifth, they expected blood money to silence you, but it amplified you. They believed that sacrificing you would end your influence, erase your name, and silence your voice forever. Blood money has that illusion. Pay the price to bury someone and the world will never hear from them again. But silence isn't bought with betrayal, and a chosen one cannot be muted by schemes. Their attempt to eliminate you had the opposite effect. Instead of vanishing, your presence grew louder. Instead of erasing you, they highlighted you. Instead of silencing you, they accidentally turned you into a voice that cannot be ignored. The more they tried to suppress your story, the more it spread. Targeting you became evidence that you mattered. Betrayal leaves fingerprints, and those fingerprints point back to you not as a victim, but as proof of resilience. They made you unforgettable. People ask why you were targeted, why they feared you so much, and why so much effort was put into silencing you. The answers amplify who you are. They expected blood money to erase your existence, but it became a megaphone for it. They funded your testimony without realizing it. Every plot, every attempt to destroy your credibility, every ritual they believed would wipe you out became material for your story. They made you the headline when they thought they were erasing your name. They became your advertisers while trying to be your assassins. The haunting part is that once a voice like yours has been amplified, it can never be contained again. You became the echo that haunts their silence, the truth that interrupts their lies, and the light that slips through every crack they tried to seal. They can't mute you because your voice doesn't come from them, it comes from a place beyond their reach. Their plan failed because you don't silence chosen ones with betrayal, you amplify them. They tried to bury your sound, but your voice carries like thunder. The harder they tried to quiet it, the louder it became. Now your very existence speaks, and no amount of blood money can drown it out. Sixth, they couldn't buy the spirit within you. They moved with the arrogance of people who think money can buy anything: loyalty, love, influence, even life itself. They assumed that by sacrificing you, they could purchase control over your destiny, as if your spirit was another item on their shopping list. But they made the gravest mistake, confusing material wealth with spiritual power. Money can buy lies, crowds, and the illusion of strength, but it cannot buy the divine spark that lives within you. That spark is untouchable, and the moment they came for it, their empire of greed began to rot from the inside. They thought they owned you once they exchanged you for profit, but ownership of the chosen cannot be transferred. It was never theirs. What dwells in you doesn't belong to man, it belongs to God, which makes you something money can never manipulate. They could steal your possessions, block your opportunities, even tarnish your reputation for a season, but they could not purchase or extinguish what gives you life. This is why everything they built on the back of betraying you crumbles. They can buy comfort, but they can't buy peace. They can buy recognition, but they can't buy respect. They can buy silence from some people, but they can't buy silence from the truth. Without that spirit inside, all they have is emptiness dressed up as power. They hold money but feel poorer. Material gain fades, but the spiritual spark endures. The money they gained in exchange for you started to slip through their fingers, because anything built on selling out the chosen is cursed to collapse. Meanwhile, you carry what can't be purchased, broken, or duplicated. They couldn't buy your spirit because your value was never for sale, and now their own hunger for control has left them with nothing but dust where their empire stood. That is the cost of greed. When you try to buy what God placed in someone, you don't just fail. You lose everything you thought you gained. Seventh, their rituals worked against themselves. They went into their rituals with confidence, believing that placing you on their altar would unlock power, wealth, or influence for themselves. In their minds, you were just a pawn, a sacrifice to fuel their ambitions. But you cannot curse what God has consecrated. Every act they performed, every dark intention they released, every word they spoke in hidden places didn't land on you. It circled back to them stronger. Instead of blessings, their rituals became weapons against their own hands. What they thought would destroy you became the thing that ate away at them. They didn't expect resistance because they underestimated the power covering your life. To them, rituals were exchanges: give blood, get power. But life doesn't work that way when it comes to chosen ones. What they offered on the altar became evidence against them. The smoke didn't rise as an offering, it clung to them as a curse. They expected to walk away with more, but they left with less. Their health faltered, their relationships collapsed, their minds became restless. That wasn't random, it was the reversal. They planted destruction, but the soil they used was their own lives, so it grew back at their feet. They were so eager to see you break that they never noticed the cracks forming in their own foundation. They can't undo what they did. Once a ritual is released, the energy has to find somewhere to go. Because you were covered, it bounced off you and found its way back to the source. They became haunted by their own work. They became victims of their own sacrifice, and no matter how much they tried to cleanse it, cover it, or explain it away, they can't escape the consequences. You weren't destroyed, they were. What was meant to bury you became their self-destruction. What was meant to silence you became the loudest evidence of their corruption. Their rituals exposed them for who they are, architects of their own downfall. They fell hard because they tried to rise by putting you on an altar that was never theirs to touch. 8th, they didn't realize you were the test, not the target. They looked at you and saw an easy target, vulnerable, isolated, and valuable enough to exploit. They thought their role was to overpower you, take advantage of your position, and profit from your existence. But you were never the target. You were the test. Life placed you in their path not so they could destroy you, but so they could reveal who they really are. How they handled you was going to expose their true character, and they failed miserably. By choosing greed over integrity, they revealed their corruption to heaven itself. They could have chosen compassion, honor, or protection. They could have chosen loyalty instead of betrayal, but they saw you as currency. In that decision, they traded their own future. Every action they took against you was recorded not just in the eyes of people, but in the realm where nothing is hidden. They thought nobody would know, but their choices shouted louder than words. Their downfall was inevitable. Tests measure what's inside, and when pressed, they showed nothing but greed, envy, and selfishness. It wasn't about what they gained from sacrificing you. It was about what they lost by revealing themselves as unworthy of the position they thought they deserved. In trying to strip you of value, they exposed their own lack of it. While they thought the focus was on you, heaven's eyes were on them. You weren't on trial, they were. You weren't being weighed, they were, and when the scales tipped, they were found lacking. That's why their schemes collapsed. That's why nothing they gained ever satisfied them, because they failed the test that determined their future. They thought you were the victim, but you were the mirror. You reflected back their hidden greed, their desperation, and their lack of integrity. They failed to treat you with the reverence a chosen one deserves, so they sealed their own downfall. What they thought was their victory was their exposure. They didn't break you, they revealed themselves. Ninth, they wanted profit but received exposure. They thought they would come out richer, believing using your name, your energy, and your downfall as leverage would give them profit. In their minds, your pain was their ticket. Your loss was their gain, and your silence was their guarantee. But they gained exposure instead. Their actions pulled off the mask and showed the world the spirit realm and even their allies who they are, people driven by greed. Exposure is worse than loss. Loss can be replaced, money can be earned again, and opportunities can reappear. But once your nature is revealed, there's no going back. Their betrayal marked them. Their name no longer carries the weight they hope to build with stolen gain, because everyone knows their success was born out of treachery. Even the people who applauded them now watch carefully, because betrayal is contagious. If they could do it to you, what's to stop them from doing it again to others? This is the curse of exposure. It destroys trust, and once trust is gone, all the wealth in the world becomes irrelevant. They may have touched money from their betrayal, but that money couldn't silence the whispers, the suspicions, and the evidence that followed. Their actions became louder than the currency they received. What they thought would buy them power bought them a reputation they can never shake. The profit they thought they secured has no real use, because reputation is the true currency. Without it, wealth is paper. Without it, influence collapses, doors shut, and alliances dissolve. They wanted to walk away with more, but they were stripped of the one thing no one can afford to lose: credibility. Their betrayal didn't make you vanish, it made them visible. It didn't erase you, it exposed them. They became the headline, a tale of how greed never prospers for long. They were busy chasing profit, so they didn't see that the price they would pay was their reputation, forever stained, forever remembered. 10th, they miscalculated the value of your destiny. They treated your destiny like something that could be traded, flipped, or exchanged for their benefit. To them, you were like cheap goods on a shelf, something to bargain with, something they could undervalue and still profit from. But you were not ordinary merchandise. You were divine property. Your life, your path, and your purpose were stamped with God's signature, which means no human had the authority to put a price tag on you. The moment they tried, they miscalculated. Your destiny isn't measured in bills or coins, it's measured in what it produces beyond you. It's measured in the lives you're meant to impact, the generations you're meant to influence, the chains you're meant to break, and the doors you're meant to open. They thought they were dealing with something small and temporary, but they were handling something eternal. And when you undervalue the eternal, you pay a price far greater than what you thought you'd gain. This is why their schemes never prospered. They tried to make a quick trade, but how do you profit from something that can't be sold? It's like pawning off the sun. You can't own it, you can't sell it, and you can't contain its value. The attempt is evidence of ignorance. Their attempt to devalue your destiny didn't shrink it. It revealed how small their vision was. The universe always collects on miscalculations like that. They thought you were worth little, but the bill came back multiplied against them. They thought betraying you would enrich them, but it impoverished them in ways they couldn't predict. Closed doors, broken peace, constant losses, and a reputation they can't recover from. They mispriced you, and the penalty was steep because chosen ones are not measured by temporary gain. They are measured by eternal impact. To reduce you to coins and contracts was to declare war on heaven's blueprint for your life, and heaven always defends its own. That's why you're still standing, and that's why they're still paying. They tried to put a cheap price on something priceless, and the universe charged them the balance with interest. 11th, they became prisoners of the currency they worshipped. They believed money would be their ticket to freedom. In their minds, sacrificing you was the key to unlocking a life without limits, where power and comfort would erase the emptiness they carried. But the money they gained became their prison. Every bill, every coin, and every possession tied to their betrayal is a reminder of the cost of their corruption. They can't spend it without remembering how they got it, and they can't enjoy it without fearing it will be snatched away. That's the trap of currency worship. It never satisfies, it only demands more. The thing they thought would make them untouchable keeps them awake at night. They walk around paranoid, worried about exposure, worried about being betrayed the same way they betrayed you, worried about their foundation crumbling. That's captivity, and it's of their own making. Money cannot heal betrayal, it magnifies it. Instead of numbing their conscience, it haunts them. It turns their possessions into ghosts. The car they drive, the house they live in, and the clothes they wear each whisper the truth they try to silence. They traded integrity for greed and sold someone who could never be erased. Every time they touch what they gain, they're reminded of you, because your essence is the unshakable proof of what they failed to destroy. Their hunger never ends. They thought this betrayal would be the deal that set them for life, but greed doesn't satisfy. It multiplies. What was once enough becomes too little, and the cycle repeats itself. Now they're prisoners to what they worship, forever chasing, forever empty, and forever haunted. The irony is sharp. They sacrificed you believing money would secure their future, but money became the bars of their cell. They thought they bought freedom, but they purchased chains. And while they live bound by paranoia and hunger, you remain untouchable, because what fuels you can't be bought or sold. They are trapped by the currency of this world, while you move in the freedom of a destiny that money can't buy. 12th, they were willing to kill for bread, but you were meant to multiply it. Their willingness to sacrifice you over scraps revealed just how limited their vision was. To them, survival meant clawing for bread, fighting for crumbs, and snatching whatever they could from whoever looked vulnerable. They were so desperate for quick gain that they were willing to kill for it, willing to destroy someone chosen just to feel like they had secured a temporary advantage. But that desperation exposed the truth. They were thinking small, operating from lack, while you were destined to operate from abundance. Bread is not the end goal for a chosen one. You weren't created just to eat. You were created to multiply. You carry the kind of power that takes nothing and produces something that transforms scarcity into overflow, that feeds more than just yourself. Where they were begging for crumbs, you were built to provide for nations. Where they were scrambling for scraps, you were being prepared to open storehouses. They thought you were competition for survival, but you were the solution to hunger itself. They destroyed what was meant to sustain them in trying to take bread from you. They cut themselves off from the oven. You were carrying provision that extended beyond what they could imagine, and instead of honoring it, they tried to eliminate it. Their vision couldn't comprehend your purpose. Greed makes people blind. They were focused on crumbs so they couldn't see the bakery. They were focused on today's hunger so they couldn't see tomorrow's abundance. They were focused on taking so they missed that you were destined to give, which is why their schemes could never prosper. Bread gained through betrayal rots, while bread multiplied through divine purpose never runs out. They were willing to kill for a slice, but you were anointed to distribute loaves. They thought destroying you would feed them, but it exposed their vision's emptiness. Your destiny remains designed not for crumbs, but for nations. 13th. Their sacrifice didn't break you, it validated you. The truth is, their attempt to sacrifice you didn't break you, it validated you. The fact that you were singled out, targeted, and placed on their altar is evidence that you carry a weight they couldn't handle. Nobody sacrifices the ordinary. Nobody wastes energy plotting against something empty. A farmer doesn't burn barren fields. They burn the ones fertile enough to grow. Their attack wasn't a reflection of your weakness, it was confirmation of your worth. They thought their betrayal was the blow that would erase you from relevance. But their obsession with you exposed the truth they were trying to hide. You are not ordinary. You carried power they wanted to tap into, and when they couldn't control it, they tried to eliminate it. In their attempt to strip you down, they revealed what heaven had already dressed you with. If you had been irrelevant, they would have ignored you, but they schemed, plotted, and spent resources against you. Their sacrifices were never about destroying nothing. They were about trying to break something too significant for them to handle. When you survived, the validation became undeniable. In attempting to break you, they broke their credibility. In trying to erase your name, they engraved it deeper. The smoke of their sacrifice rose as proof of your divine appointment. What they intended for ruin became your evidence. What they intended for silence became your amplification. They thought would end you was what exposed who you are: chosen, powerful, and untouchable in the ways that matter. Their attack didn't invalidate your destiny, it confirmed it. You weren't broken, you were proven. You weren't erased, you were established. 14th. What they wanted died in their hands, but what you carry still lives. Everything they sold you out for money, influence, and approval has crumbled or is slipping faster than they can grip it. Their hands are stained with betrayal, but they're also empty because nothing they chased had lasting substance. Greed makes people blind, and in their blindness they thought temporary gain could outweigh eternal purpose. The result, their so-called blessings rotted while the life they tried to extinguish continues to grow stronger. They can sacrifice, scheme, and conspire all they want, but if what you carry is divine, it can't be transferred, purchased, or destroyed. Their disintegrating power moved because they were never designed to sustain that kind of spirit. They wanted wealth, but it slipped away. They wanted to be remembered, but they are already forgotten. They wanted control, but now they live paranoid, consumed by fear that their hands will expose them. Meanwhile, you remain. What you carry thrives not because you fought harder, but because your purpose is untouchable. You were entrusted with something that doesn't rot, something that can't be converted into paper or coins. It grows through betrayal, multiplies through pain, and strengthens through opposition. Every attempt to destroy you has watered it. Every loss you endured made it flourish more. They risked everything thinking your fall was their jackpot, yet they ended up with nothing. Their sacrifice exposed their own emptiness while your survival confirmed your abundance. They're left with dust in their hands while you still carry fire in your spirit. What they wanted perished, but what you hold is eternal. You stand as living proof that destiny can't be sold, stolen, or silenced. It can only be fulfilled. In the end, every attempt they made to silence you, manipulate you, and reduce your worth to coins and profit has failed. Every act of betrayal they committed became evidence of their own emptiness. Every attempt to destroy you amplified your strength, and every ritual they performed against you turned back to expose their corruption. They gambled with your life, miscalculated your value, and worshipped currency over integrity, only to discover that what they sought could never be theirs to claim. You weren't broken by their hands, you were validated. You weren't silenced, you were amplified. You weren't destroyed, you were proven. They became prisoners of their greed while you remained untouchable, carrying a power that can't be bought, sold, or stolen. What they wanted died, but what you carry thrives, unstoppable and unshakable. Every failure of theirs is a testament to your indestructible spirit, and every misstep is a mirror reflecting your destiny's magnitude. Betrayal can't erase purpose, greed can't override destiny, and schemes built on fear and envy always collapse. They tried to bury you, but they watered the roots of your legacy. They sacrificed you for what they thought was gain, but the universe secured your rise. You are the proof that chosen ones are never disposable. Divine purpose can't be undermined. And no hand can touch what heaven has marked. Stand tall, knowing that every attempt to break you has confirmed your worth. They failed, but you remain, 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 remain.